Let me tell you about something that I saw in the news about 8 years ago. I remember coming home one day after work and turning on the television, and there was this same news story running on every single channel. They were talking about this woman who'd been appointed to this big government position, and she was being publicly fired from her job. And I watched this news story. There was a press conference camera shot of this woman running on every single channel, and I couldn't help but ask myself, how does somebody come back from a difficult situation like that? You ever see these news stories and wonder? Well, it was like an out-of-body experience watching this news story that day, because the woman on the news being publicly fired was me. My name is Heather Bolajak Smith, and I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney for 14 years. I'm a member of the Indiana Bar and the Louisiana Bar. My business, Second Genesis Training, LLC, is a training company. I now work as a professional speaker, trainer, and coach. By the time I was 30 years old, I became the youngest woman ever appointed to lead a state agency in the state of Indiana. And I was thrilled. I left the big ivory tower law firm with my suit on and my briefcase in hand and walked down the sidewalk to show up for my first day as the new executive director. And there I was. Here I come to save the day. And I showed up. There were 35 employees, a $60 million budget, and this was my new role. And anytime you step into a new role, who's expected to have the technical skills necessary and essential to performing the functions of that job on day one? Whether or not you've been given the tools, the training, the resources that you need in order to be immediately credible and successful. You are. And when I stepped into this new role, I thought, I'll approach this like I've done everything else, and things seem to be working. My approach to everything had always been to be the overachiever. I learned that pattern very early on. From kindergarten through the 8th grade, I was the only student of color in my entire school in Avon, Indiana. That was just my difference. And so I learned to overachieve to find the acceptance of my peers. So I just hit the ground running as the overachiever in my new position. We just do what we know, don't we? Whether it's working or not. And in the first 12 months, some great things started to happen. The agency received some public recognition for our achievements, and then individually I received an award that I had coveted my entire life. It's called the Torchbearer Award. It's the highest honor that Indiana gives to women. And that evening, as my name was called, I stepped up onto the stage and stood there as they placed a medal around my neck. It had a big purple ribbon and a gold medal. And in that moment, I did something I rarely ever do publicly. I cried right there on the stage. Because in my mind, I thought, now I'm good enough. Now I belong. And there were more accolades that followed. So as you can imagine, I thought, I'm doing pretty good. But then at the end of the first year, I found myself sitting at the back of a conference room with the television camera lights on my face as I stared straight ahead, seemingly without emotion, as the board of directors entered the room, circled the table, took their seats, and then publicly voted me off the island. Fired. Publicly fired. And then talked about. Overnight. Career? Gone. The name I worked my whole life to achieve? Gone. My ability to support my 2 children, who at that time were 10, my daughter Taylor, and not even a year old, my son Sterling. Gone. And all I could think about in that moment was, how will I ever come back from this? So you know what I did in the months that followed? I just developed a very close, personal relationship with my couch and M&Ms. We got really tight. And there I was for all those months, on that couch. I thought I would never get off that couch. And the funny thing about being on the couch is that I had a daily routine of television shows I would watch, laying there, being stuck in my own yuck. And that even though we have some habits that aren't producing the personal and professional results and successes that we say we want, the couch can start to get comfortable after a while. In my business, Second Genesis Training, what I now do is travel the country telling the full story about what I went through and the lessons that I learned in that mess, and how the lessons that I learned translate into skills that we must have in order to have the personal and professional success, results, and abundance and happiness that we say we want and that everyone deserves. My purpose was something that I discovered by losing everything that I thought was my everything. When I was 17 years old, I had a book that was entitled How to Make It Big in the Seminar Business. There was a teacher, Linda Blemker, where I went to high school, who taught me how to discover my own voice as a speaker, and the light just went on, and I absolutely fell in love with the idea of using your voice if you have that particular calling, and I really believe that I do, to help other people. But I pushed that away. Life happened. I became a single mother at the age of 21, so I went to law school. Was motivated by providing for my daughter at that time. And life brought me back around to that purpose, somewhat kicking and screaming at first under the circumstances. But now I've stepped into my business as an entrepreneur, and I use my story, my professional background as an attorney, and the skills that I've learned in business and through lifelong learning, studying experts, to coach and train and speak to other people all around the country. I travel and train at different classes of adult learners, and I'm working on building my business to continue to be able to coach and develop other people in corporate environments and individually. I'm hoping this year also to finish my book that I've started writing and to use my skills for writing as well to share my story. These are my passions, and sometimes we have to lose it all to gain ourselves. But if we can find the lesson in the mess and share our stories, it can be the most empowering way to get unstuck. So that's what I do. That's what my business is all about. And there are days when it's really tough, when I'm looking at numbers and worried about providing, but I've decided to step out on faith and know that the rest will be taken care of. And looking back on all of that 8 years ago, it is like an out-of-body experience, because who I became out of that seems so different from that fired girl who was publicly humiliated in that moment. And I hope to continue to grow Second Genesis Training, be able to support many other individuals, professionals, and organizations who are stuck on that couch. My whole mission, my whole motto is all about get off the couch. Thanks for listening.